night has come to an end, and the light of dawn is entering. O Jiva soul, arise and give up your sleep. Chant the holy names of Lord Hari, who is the giver of liberation, the enemy of the Mura demon, the supreme enjoyer, the all-attractive one, and the horse-headed incarnation, Hayagriva. Lord Hari Krishna incarnated as the half-man, half-lion, Nrsimha. He appeared as the dwarf Brahmana named Upendra, and is the killer of the Madhu demon. He is the beloved son of the king of Raj, Nanda Maharaj, and is blackish in complexion. He is the slayer of the Putana witch, and the destroyer of the demon, Kaitava. All glories to Lord Hari, who appeared as Lord Ram, the son of Dasharath. He is the darling of Mother Yashoda. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajak Acharya Ashotara Sata Shri Srimad, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajak Acharya Ashotara Sata Shri Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Prem Se Guru Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopi Go Shamakunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Nitai Gaura Premanandi. All gloriously assembled devotees. All gloriously assembled devotees. All gloriously assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd Canto, Chapter 4, titled Vidura Approaches Maitreya. We'll do text 14 together, and then I'll do text 15, because there's no purport for 14. Is someone going to put it up? Iti adrita uktaha Paramasya Pumsaha Pratikshana Anugraha Bhajanaha 14 and 15. So pull up 14. Aham Sneha Uttha Roma Skalita Askara Tam Munchan Suchaha Pranjalihi Abhabhase Ityadritoktaf Paramasya Pumsa Ityadritoktaf Paramasya Pumsa Pratikshananugraha Bhajanoham Pratikshananugraha Bhajanoham Snehotaroma Skalitaksharastham Snehotaroma Skalitaksharastham Munchan Chuchaf Pranjali Abhabhase Munchan Chanu Munchan Chuchaf Pranjali Abhabhase Ityadritoktaf Paramasya Pumsa Pratikshananugraha Bhajanoham Snehotaroma Skalitaksharastam Munchan Chuchaf Pranjali Abhabhase Ityadritoktav paramasya pumsa Pratikshananugraha bhajanoham Snehotaroma skalitaksharastham Munchanchuchav pranjali abhavase. Please chant.
Ityadritokta paramasya pumsa Pratikshananuraha bhajanoham Nihottaromaskalitaksharastam Munchanchucha pranjalir abhavase Ityadritokta paramasya pumsa Pratikshananugraha bhajanoham Snehotaroma skalitaksharastam Munchanchucha pranjalir abhavase
Ityadritoktav paramasya pumsa Pratikshananugraha bhajanoham Snehotaroma skalitaksharastam Munchanchucha pranjalir abhavase. Ityadritoktav paramasya pumsa Pratikshananugraha bhajanoham Snehotaroma skalitaksharastam Munchanchucha pranjalir abhavase. Ityadritoktav paramasya pumsa Pratikshananugraha bhajanoham Snehotaroma skalitaksharastam Munchanchucha pranjalir abhavase. Mataji's? Ityadritoktav paramasya pumsa Pratikshananugraha bhajanoham Snehotaroma skalitaksharastam Munchanchucha pranjalir abhavase. Ityadritoktav paramasya pumsa Snehotaroma skalitaksharastam Munchanchucha pranjalir abhavase. Ityadritoktav paramasya pumsa Pratikshananugraha bhajanoham Snehotaroma skalitaksharastam Munchanchucha pranjalir abhavase. Iti. Thus, Adrita, being favored, Uktaha, addressed, Paramasya, of the Supreme, Pumsaha, personality of Godhead, Pratikshana, Anugraha, Bhajana, object of favor. Aham, myself. Sneha, Roma, hairs on the body. Skalita, slackened. Akshara, of the eyes. Tam, that. Munchan, smearing. Suchaha, tears. Pranjalihi, with folded hands. Abhabhase, said. Translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Uddhava said, O Vidura, when I was thus favored at every moment by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and addressed him with great affection, my words failed in tears, and the hairs on my body erupted. After smearing my tears, I, with folded hands, spoke like this. So I'll go through the next verse in translation purport. Konvishate padasaroja bhajan sudur laboriteshu chatur svapiha tatapi naham pravirnomi bhuman bhavat padam bhoja niveshano sukha. Translation and purport. O my Lord, devotees who engage in this transcendental loving service of your lotus feet have no difficulty in achieving anything within the realm of the four principles of religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation. But, O Great One, as far as I am concerned, I have preferred only to engage in the loving service of your lotus feet. Purport. Those who are associated with the Lord in the Vaikuntha planets achieve all the bodily features of the Lord to be the same as Lord Vishnu. Such liberation is called Sarupya Mukti, which is one of the 5 kinds of liberation. The devotees engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord never accept the Sayuja Mukti, or merging into the rays of the Lord called the Brahmajyoti. The devotees can achieve not only liberation, but any success in the realm of religiosity, economic development, or sense gratification up to the standard of the demigods in the heavenly planets. But such a pure devotee as Uddhava refused to accept all such facilities. A pure devotee wants simply to engage in the service of the Lord and does not consider his own personal benefit. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshuru Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Mano Bhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utaf Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvetam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanshana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanshakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanevyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vikasa Swaminiti Namine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Sarasvate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Konvishate pada saroja bhajam sudurlabo riteshu chatursvapiha tatapi naham pravirnomi bhuman bhavat padam bhoja niveshanu sukha. O my Lord, devotees who engage in the transcendental loving service of your lotus feet have no difficulty in achieving anything within the realm of the 4 principles of religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation. But, O Great One, as far as I am concerned, I have preferred only to engage in the loving service of your lotus feet. We are continuing here reading this 4th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, where Vidura will approach Maitreya Muni questioning him about further topics of which he inquired from Uddhava. And currently we have Uddhava and Maitreya here with Krishna. And Uddhava's describing how when he was addressed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead in such a way, he exhibited these ecstatic symptoms and then spoke to Krishna, saying that the only thing that he wants is devotional service to Krishna, which is ultimately what everyone's looking for. Everyone's looking for happiness, and the only way that we can get that happiness is to render transcendental loving service to Krishna. However, unfortunately in this material world and in this Kali Yuga, most people, they aren't looking for this. It's described here, these 4 principles of religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation. This is known as the Chatur Varga, this Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha. So first, if people are pious at all or have some sort of idea, they'll engage in Dharma. They'll do some good activities, they'll engage in some sort of work so they can get some sort of result. It isn't just that you can do Dharma in terms of following some sort of religion or following some sort of process, but people, they work so hard every single day and they perform so many austerities for the sake of Artha, which here is described as economic development, but it can also be translated as wealth. People perform some sort of austerities, they perform some sort of activities so they can get wealth, so they can get economic development, so they can get something. And then with this wealth, with this Artha, they engage in Kama, or sense gratification. Right? You can't really have so much sense gratification if you don't have anything. If you don't have a house, if you don't have a car, if you don't have friends to hang out with, if you don't have money to spend, if you don't have places to go, you can't really enjoy so much. So people, they perform all this austerity, they get all of this wealth, and they engage it in Kama, in sense gratification. And then eventually people get fried out with sense gratification, and they start to engage in moksha. Or they come to the realization that, okay, I've tried so much for this sense gratification, and none of it made me happy. So I'm going to renounce from this material world and engage in moksha, or liberation. Freedom from this cycle of birth and death, freedom from this suffering. Unfortunately, also, we see people who come to this platform of moksha, they also go back and try to enjoy in this material world. Because this moksha, it's often described as simply impersonal liberation. It refers to liberation in general, but the context that it's mostly used in is used to describe this impersonal liberation, or as Srila Prabhupada describes here in the purport, merging into the rays of the Lord called the Brahmajyoti. We see so many yogis and we hear about so many munis, so many people who engage in austerities in the Srimad Bhagavatam, and they come to some high level of realization, but with all their yogic power, with all their yogic practice, even if they're at this high level of liberation through their gyan, through their austerities, they still come under the clutches of this material existence. We see, as I was just reading in the 9th canto, this pastime, and it's kind of like a contrast, if you really look at it, between Ambarish Maharaj and Saubhari Muni, where Saubhari Muni, he was a great ascetic. He was a great rishi. He was engaged in so many different austerities. In fact, he was performing austerities under the water and engaged in so many different penances. He was living a very austere life, and he had so much mystic power. But he was attracted, or his mind was agitated, by seeing 2 fish engage in sex life. And with that, his mind became agitated, and he thought, okay, I've developed all this mystic power. Why don't I go and enjoy? So as a rishi who had been performing austerities for countless years and being very far in the age of his body at least, he appeared like a very ugly person. It's described that his skin was very wrinkled, his hair was matted, he had a very disheveled appearance. But he approached this one king for charity. And it's general practice for sages or brahmanas to go and approach the kings and the leaders of society for their maintenance, because it's the duty of the kings, the kshatriyas, to maintain the brahmanas. But he had kind of a strange request. He went up to the king and he asked him, "Can I have one of your daughters in marriage?" Which generally isn't something that a brahmana or someone who's engaged in so many great austerities asks, but he did it anyway. And it was the system, at least for the daughters of this king, because he was emperor of the whole world, it was as such that the daughters could choose who would be their husband. And Saubhri Muni, he got very discouraged because he was like, who's going to want to marry me? I'm an old man. I'm a rishi who had been performing so many austerities. Just by looking at me, there's no idea of sense gratification. So no one will want to marry me. So using his mystic power and all of his austerities, he makes himself in a young, beautiful body. He gives himself a wonderful kingdom, so many palaces, gardens, lakes, such a beautiful arrangement actually. And when he approaches these princesses, the daughters of this king, they all want to marry him. And he marries all 50 of this king's daughters. And when the king even goes to this palace constructed by Saubhri Muni, he's even blown away by the opulence. And to put this in perspective, this is the emperor of the whole world. This is like the position that his forefather Maharaj Ambarish had, the position that the Pandavas and Maharaj Yudhishthir had, that Maharaj Parikshit had, the emperor of the whole world. And when he went to see the opulence that Saubhri Muni had attained by his own mystic power, even he was blown away. He was like, wow, this guy is really going to enjoy now. But what he found was, even though he had so many beautiful wives, because it's described that the daughters of kshatriyas, they're the most beautiful, even more than those of the brahmanas. They're like the residents of the heavenly planets. So he had so many beautiful wives to enjoy with. He had so many beautiful palaces. He basically had everything that the emperor of the whole world would have and more. And he was engaging in so much sense gratification. But he still wasn't happy. Right? I know Tapas Prabhu has this awesome video of this guy talking about, he's like, yeah, man, I got 20 children, 18 baby mamas. So people are trying to enjoy to this level nowadays, but if you actually talk to these people and engage in conversation with them, you'll see that they're also suffering. They're suffering so much, and they don't even have the advanced facilities that Saubhri Muni had as being the emperor of the whole world. So people, even though they're engaging in so much sense gratification, they're still not happy. And this is what Saubhri Muni came to realize towards the end of his life. That, I was a great rishi, a great muni, but I engaged in so much sense gratification, and I engaged in so much material activity, and I'm still not happy. So again, he went for moksha, for liberation. But this moksha, this impersonal liberation, it isn't everything. There's a difference that we see here between moksha and mukti, where they both kind of translate to liberation. But here, specifically, and in generally the context which Srila Prabhupada would use it, moksha would mean this impersonal liberation, and mukti would include various kinds of liberation. It's described here the different 5 kinds of mukti. Krishna is known as Mukunda, or the giver of mukti, liberation. And these different kinds of mukti are described in the Madhya Lila of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, 266, if you want to pull that up real quick. I'll just read the translation of the purport. There are 5 kinds of liberations: Salokya, Samipya, Sarupya, Sarishti, and Sayuja. Salokya means that after material liberation, one is promoted to the planet where the Supreme Personality of Godhead resides. Samipya means remaining an associate of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sarupya means attaining a 4-handed form exactly like that of the Lord. Sarishti means attaining opulences like those of the Supreme Lord. And Sayuja means merging into the Brahman effulgence of the Lord. These are the 5 types of liberation. So these are the 5 kinds of mukti, the 5 different kinds of liberation that are offered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And we can see here, Srila Prabhupada describes in the purport that devotees engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord never accept the Sayuja Mukti, or merging into the rays of the impersonal Brahmajyoti. The devotees can achieve not only liberation, but any success in the realm of religiosity, economic development, or sense gratification up to the standard of the demigods in the heavenly planets. But such a pure devotee as Uddhava refuses to accept all such facilities. So this Sayuja Mukti, or this what's generally described as moksha, this impersonal liberation. When one engages in so much sense gratification, when one engages in so much material activity, and it doesn't make them happy, they tend to turn towards this renunciation, to this freedom from the cycle of birth and death. Because they realize no matter what material situation they're in, they're only going to engage in this cycle of happiness and distress, so the cycle of birth, death, old age, and disease. And so they gain some sort of gyan, they engage in some sort of vairagya, and they start to desire to become free from this material existence. And they might attain freedom from that in the term of this Sayuja Mukti, where you merge into the impersonal Brahman, the impersonal liberation, and finally you get free from all these material pangs, pleasures, and sufferings. But that isn't all in all. We can see that even those who achieve mukti, or even those who have this impersonal realization, even they are attracted to Krishna, right? Because it's the nature of the soul, it's actually the nature of the living entity to engage in some sort of activity, to engage in some sort of work. So simply by being a ray of light in this impersonal Brahmajyoti, one might be free from these pangs and pleasures of the material world, but one still desires something. Whenever one has some sort of desire, they come out of this impersonal liberation and they get the opportunity to engage in this desire. And we can see it's described as liberated persons who already had this idea of impersonal liberation. They were actually attracted to Krishna. We hear, at least, I'm sure there's many more, but at least 2 individuals, or I guess one is a set of individuals, but for example, the 4 Kumaras, where they were described as liberated persons, but they were impersonalists. But then when they smelt the aroma of the tulasi leaves coming from the feet of Krishna, they were so much attracted, and they became devotees. Also, we hear in the instance of Shukadev Goswami, where even when he was in the womb of his mother, he was already a liberated person. In fact, he didn't even want to come out of the womb, because he was like, this material world is a waste of time, it's useless. Even of his own father, Vyasadeva, he was like, yeah, he's engaged in Maya, he's in family life, so I'll just stay exactly where I am. And we see even after Krishna convinced him to leave the womb of his mother and to come out into the material world, immediately he left his family and he went to the forest. But even after this, he was attracted when Vyasadeva was describing different pastimes of Krishna, different verses from the Srimad Bhagavatam, actually. So when one achieves this impersonal liberation, there is a higher state that one can attain. As was described here, there is 5 different kinds of mukti, where you can have personal relationship and personal association with Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And one can engage in these different kinds of activities, and by engaging in these activities, one actually gets a higher level of perfection than that of the impersonal liberation. There are so many people that think this impersonal liberation is all in all. We can see through the practical experience of those in the Srimad Bhagavatam that there is more. And we see this most exhibited in the case of Ambarish Maharaj, which this pastime comes right before this pastime of Saubhari Muni, and you're really able to see the contrast and comparison. Because Ambarish Maharaj, he was a Maharaj, he was a great king. He had so much material opulence, he had so much wealth. He was actually the emperor of the whole world. But he was not attracted by any of these allurements. He had so many things, he had so many material facilities to enjoy, but he was using it only in the service of Krishna. Right? It's described that he would use all of his senses, all of his activities. Every moment in his day, he would engage it in the 9 processes of devotional service. This Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atmanivedanam. All these different processes of devotional service, Ambarish Maharaj, he was engaging in all these different activities. But it wasn't like he was some poor man or he was a beggar, but he was a great king. He had all these different external facilities. It's described here that the devotees can achieve not only liberation, but any success in the realm of religiosity, economic development, or sense gratification up to the standard of the demigods. And even more than that, it's described by Bilvamangala Thakur that mukti svayam muktinjali sevate sman, that for a devotee, mukti is not very important because mukti is always standing on his doorstep, waiting to serve him in some way. And this is because one is fully surrendered to Krishna. This mukti, this liberation, is also a devotee of Krishna and is willing to serve the great devotees of Krishna and the people that have come up to this high level of devotional service. So the highest level, one can say, even higher than mukti, is this vimukti. And this is described actually by Narada Muni to Dhruva Maharaj. That he described this vimukti, or this highest level of realization past this level of sense gratification. And this is described as this ahaitukya pratyata bhakti, this uninterrupted, unmotivated devotional service to Krishna. So one is engaging in so much activity, one is engaging in so much devotional service, but it isn't that one is doing it with the thought or the desire that I'm engaging in this activity, so I will attain liberation. They aren't doing it for any external reason, thinking that they'll achieve a specific result. But rather, all these dharma, artha, kama, moksha, everything, it's automatically given to the devotee. Right? It's described that mukti will be standing at his doorstep waiting to serve him. So one who is engaged in this uninterrupted, unmotivated devotional service, one doesn't have to aspire for this liberation. One doesn't have to engage in so much effort to have the personal association of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Because the process of bhakti and the goal of bhakti, it's actually the same. It isn't that we're engaging in this life trying to practice devotional service, trying to be devotees of Krishna. It isn't like in this life we're hearing about Krishna, we're chanting Krishna's holy names, we're remembering Krishna's pastimes. We're doing so many things for Krishna, and then when we achieve liberation, then we'll simply just do something else. Right? We hear in the example of Christianity that they have so much, or some do, at least the real Christians, they have devotion for Jesus and they describe that they want to love God, but when they get to the kingdom of God, they just want to enjoy because God wants me to enjoy. That's their whole idea. But actually, in this life, this process of bhakti that we're engaging in, it's the same process that we'll be engaging in this highest level of our uninterrupted and unmotivated devotional service. When we go to the spiritual world, we'll also be singing the glories of Krishna. We'll be hearing about the wonderful pastimes of Krishna. And we'll be engaging in Krishna's different pastimes. That's one of the reasons why I sung this beautiful song, this Vibhava Rishesha. It's a beautiful song in which it describes all these different pastimes and incarnations of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And this is really important because not only does this song emphasize the wonderful pastimes and the wonderful glories of Krishna in his pastimes, but it really emphasizes this personal aspect of Krishna, right? There's so many things here that describe how Krishna is a person, how he gives pleasure to the cows in the land of Vrindavan, how he incarnates as the half-man, half-lion, Nrsimhadev, as the dwarf Brahmana, Vamana, As Ramachandra, he engaged in so many different kinds of activities. He's actually described here, he's worshipped as Yogindra Vandana. He's worshipped by the best of yogis. And he wanders about playing his flute, and he looks very charming. He's described here as the color of a fresh rain cloud, and his form is enchanting. So this is the vision of our previous acharyas who have attained this level of liberation and who are at this highest level of devotional service actually while they're still here in the material world. Because it isn't that we have to leave this body or we have to go somewhere else to get this high level of liberation. But actually simply by following this process of devotional service, in this very lifetime, we can attain this high level of devotional service. Right? This song that's being described, it's the vision of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He's seeing all of these pastimes going on. He's engaging in these pastimes while he's present here in this material world. And Srila Prabhupada, he would often describe these temples, these places for executing devotional service, as embassies of the spiritual world. That these temples are non-different from Vaikuntha. They're free from anxiety. They're non-different from the spiritual world. So simply by engaging in this process of Krishna consciousness, in this very lifetime, we can attain Bhakti Vinod. We can attain this bliss of Krishna consciousness and of devotional service. But with this Bhakti Vinod, we also need to have the proper Bhakti Siddhanta, the proper understanding of devotional service. Because unless we read this Srimad Bhagavatam, unless we read the books of Srila Prabhupada, unless we get this understanding from our previous acharyas, we might put on an external show of being liberated, or we might say that we're free from all these material desires, but in our heart we won't actually be free because we won't be following this process outlined by our previous acharyas. And this process, it's actually wonderfully delineated by Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. You can pull up the 9th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. You can just go to the index, and you can go to 26, I think. Yeah. Krishna says that if one offers me with devotion a leaf, a flower, fruit, or water, I will accept it. Whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer or give away, and whatever austerities you perform, do that, O son of Kunti, as an offering to me. In this way, you'll be free from bondage of work and its auspicious and inauspicious results. With your mind fixed on me in this principle of renunciation, you will be liberated and come to me. I envy no one, nor am I partial to anyone. I am equal to all. But whoever renders devotional service unto me is a friend, is in me, and I am also a friend to him. Even if one commits the most abominable action, if he is engaged in devotional service, he is considered to be saintly, because he is properly situated in his determination. He quickly becomes righteous and attains lasting peace. O son of Kunti, declare it boldly that my devotee never perishes. O son of Pratha, those who take shelter in me, though they may be of lower birth, women, Vaishyas, merchants, and Shudras, workers, can attain the supreme destination. How much more
How much more this is so of the righteous brahmanas, the devotees, and the saintly kings. Therefore, having come to this temporary miserable world, engage in loving service unto me. Engage your mind in always thinking of me. Become my devotee. Offer obeisances unto me, and worship me. Become completely absorbed in me. Surely you will come to me. So Krishna is describing that just in this very lifetime, by engaging in all these different processes of Sarva dharman parityaja mamekam sharanam vraja ham tvam sarva papebhyo moksha yisyami ma suchaha. That abandoning all these other varieties of dharma and simply surrendering everything unto Krishna and worshiping him, that we will be able to achieve this level of liberation. And it isn't just for the yogis or for the kings or for the rishis, but it's for everybody, even for the people of lower birth. And it can be known that all of us being born in the Western countries, we actually have this lower birth. We are malechas. We are the lowest of the low. But even we can come up in this process of Krishna consciousness simply by following this process given here by Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. Why is this? Because the external covering of the body doesn't actually change the internal nature of the soul. Doesn't change the Svarup, or the constitutional position of the living entity. And this word, Svarup, it's actually very important because it's Sva-rupa. Rupa means form. So this Svarup, this original position, it's not some impersonal liberation, but it's actually the form that we have in the spiritual world. And what is that? Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu describes as Jiver Svarupoy Krishna Nityadas, that we're the eternal servant of Krishna. And we take this form, we have this personal relationship with Krishna, and in this personal relationship, we serve Krishna. So in this life that we're engaged in, we should engage in as much personal service as we possibly can. Because this life, it's simply a stepping point on our way back home, back to Godhead. It's described that if one is going on a vacation or if one is traveling from place to place, like devotees go on traveling Sankirtan often, and we don't just travel, 30 minutes here or 1 hour there. But we travel sometimes 10 hours, 11 hours, 12 hours. We travel all over the country. And since we travel so far, sometimes the situations that we're in, whether it's the climate, whether it's the weather, whether it's a different event that we'll be working, the situation will be different. So if one is intelligent, one will pack and one will plan for that next situation or the next destination that they're going to. For example, we have devotees that are in Colorado right now, and it's freezing. Like the other day, it was 38 degrees, I think they were saying. So if one is intelligent, one will bring warm clothes, one will bring a sweater, one will bring long pants, one will not wear sandals, but one will wear socks and shoes. And in this way, one properly prepares to reach their final destination. So in this life too, we should engage in as much personal service to Krishna and to the devotees as we possibly can. So we can prepare ourselves for going back home, back to Godhead in this very lifetime. And this is why things are also emphasized by Srila Prabhupada and our previous acharyas, like devotional clothing, like the different preparations which Krishna likes, and the different songs that Krishna likes to hear, and the different instruments that Krishna likes to listen to. Because we're trying to engage this life to prepare ourselves for going back home, back to Godhead, to attain this vimukti, this ultimate liberation where one can attain the wonderful pastimes of Krishna. Like it's been described here in this song, Vibhavarishesha, all the different pastimes Krishna is engaging in, specifically in this Goloka Vrindavan, where he engages in his wonderful cowherd pastimes. And we can actually gain entrance into this highest level of Krishna consciousness, of devotional service, and we can do it in this very lifetime. Right? Actually, in this songbook, right, because it's described how Krishna looks and how beautiful he is in Vrindavan. There's this wonderful picture here of Krishna. It's very, very beautiful. So we can sing these songs and we can meditate on this form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead And we can actually be completely content and satisfied simply by engaging in the service of the lotus feet of Krishna. And by completely surrendering unto Krishna, we won't have to worry about any other external maintenance for anything. If you simply surrender to Krishna, everything will be provided for you. So you can simply focus on Krishna. So I recommend for myself and for others that we go through these different bhajans, these different wonderful pastimes of Krishna, and really meditate and focus on these, because this is the spiritual world. And we can get a glimpse into the spiritual world through the vision of our previous acharyas. So I'll end my class here. If there's any corrections, questions, or comments, I'll take those now. Abhimani Sudha Prabhu.
Regarding these different forms of liberation, it always confused me a little bit, especially regarding this, I think, the Samhipya liberation, which I guess that's the one that you become an associate of the Lord. But I thought everyone who goes back to God becomes associate of the Lord. So are there circumstances in the spiritual world where you're not an associate of the Lord?
I'm not.
Like an intimate associate? I don't understand.
I'm not like 100% sure. That wasn't like the main topic of my research, and I haven't really gotten so much into that. But from what I understand is that, it isn't just that one achieves like one of these kinds of liberation, but by going back to Godhead, at least from my understanding, this is kind of what distinguishes it from this Sayuja Mukti, or this impersonal liberation, that one goes to the spiritual world and they have a personal relationship. So I don't think it's just that if one has like a form of the Lord, then they can't have the other one, which is be an associate of the Lord. But you can have all these different kinds of liberation. Those four kinds, obviously not the impersonal liberation and the personal kinds of liberation, but I just kind of saw that as like this distinction between, okay, this is like the impersonal and this is like the personal association. I don't know if that answers your question, but Tapas Prabhu?
It's also like that, the same question that he was wondering about, different like liberation or whatever. But there's another one also mentioned like devotees aspire to have like the same opulence and the same like body, etc. So how can like a common layman understand like how can somebody want the same opulence and not want to be God as well?
Yeah, I mean, when we're in the spiritual world, we're all in the mood of service to Krishna, right? It isn't that one goes to the spiritual world and thinking that they're the enjoyer, like this like Christian conception of the kingdom of God, that, God wants me to enjoy in this life, and then when I go to the kingdom of God, He'll want me to enjoy even more, right? It isn't that we go there with this enjoying mentality, but Krishna, he really wants to please His devotees. Krishna wants to give His devotees all these different kinds of facilities. But the point is that since we're aspiring for this highest level of Krishna consciousness, we aren't aspiring for these different kinds of mukti, or these different kinds of liberation. We aren't desiring to have a certain position in the spiritual world, or desiring to have a certain form, or have a certain level of opulence in the spiritual world. But we're simply satisfied, as Uddhava here, he's completely satisfied simply by engaging in the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that's like the point of what we're going for and the liberation that we're seeking to attain, if that answers your question.
And also, like, I wasn't aware that, I didn't know liberation was also like a personality.
Yeah. The more you know.
Amazing class.
Hare Krishna. David? Turn it on.
I was wondering about like how is this desire for liberation practically manifesting the devotees? Because I rarely meet devotees who like to merge into Brahmana virgins, but they might want to be liberated from suffering. So I was wondering, does that mean if someone is like
Well, the point is that when one is completely surrendered unto Krishna, they don't have to worry about their external situation. They don't have to think like, okay, I'm in like a suffering situation, but simply if I do this and I do that, then I'll be happy, then I can focus more on Krishna consciousness, right? Like I knew a bunch of people growing up who had the philosophy of, once I get firmly situated and properly situated in the material world, and when my level of suffering is decreased a lot, then I'll be able to focus on Krishna consciousness. And then, now like I'm not chanting any rounds, I'm not going to the temple. But like as soon as like I just have like this one thing, then immediately I'll be like a pure devotee, right? But we can see that, this is contrasted to, for example, Queen Kunti, who prays, give me more and more difficulties, give me more suffering, because then I'll actually be able to remember you more. Because the point is, no matter what situation we're in this material world, no matter how hard we try to make our material situation glorious, one, it's a temporary situation, and two, it'll just distract us from the ultimate goal of life, which is going back to Godhead. Like we saw in this case of Sabri Muni, he had the most like chill material life ever, where he had nothing to worry about. He had no external worries. He had no problems in life, but he was still suffering so much. So simply by surrendering unto Krishna, like especially as we are in the brahmacharya ashram, where we fully surrender and we give basically everything up and completely surrender, Krishna provides so much for us. Krishna provides everything. He's providing this wonderful temple. He's providing these nice vehicles that we have. Like we just got this new Balaram truck, which we got for free. So Krishna's naturally providing everything. So simply if we surrender unto Krishna, then we won't have to strive for this dharma, artha, kama, moksha. Simply by engaging in devotional service, these will naturally come, where we won't have to strive for any of these separate from Krishna consciousness, where we'll be situated in whatever position we're in, whether it's happiness or distress, or we're here or we're there, or it's like if we're in the temple, then we can practice Krishna consciousness, but like the second that we go home, we like stop chanting our rounds, we stay up late. But a devotee, no matter what external material situation they're in, they're always completely fixed. So this is the position that one should be in, where they aren't externally striving for any of these, I guess like you were describing, like a comfortable position and freedom from this cycle of birth and death and this happiness and distress. But they should have the understanding that naturally by engaging in devotional service, all these things will come. Does that answer your question?
I think we were asking like, what were the questions again? Which is a little different.
So basically, maybe it was like not so concentrated in my question. So I was curious, like how this desire for liberation manifests in a devotee's life practically. So generally, devotees don't want to merge into the Brahma, but they still desire liberation. Like there is this definition of pure devotional service as so free from this things, jnana and karma. Jnana, as far as I understand, is mainly aimed at liberation. So jnanis want to liberate themselves from suffering. So I was curious, like, what is it? Like, how is it manifest in devotee's life, and how can we get free from that desire for liberation?
Yeah, I mean, I guess just by, getting a higher philosophical understanding. Because you're basically asking, right, like a devotee might have the desire for liberation and to get freedom from suffering, and are you asking like how they overcome that, or? Yeah, I mean, when one fully surrenders unto Krishna, Krishna fully reciprocates with them. Like there's this pastime in the Krishna book of Sudama, where he's invited to Krishna's palace in Dvaraka, and he brings with him something for Krishna to take, but it's this like poor man's like this chipped rice. But he gives everything that he has, and he surrenders fully unto Krishna, And Krishna gives him all this opulence and all this facility, but even then he has the understanding that, okay, now I'm going to use this for Krishna's service. So simply by surrendering unto Krishna, we'll be able to practically see that reciprocation in our lives. Similarly, like when we're out on the book distribution, when we start to think that, okay, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, maybe if I say this, maybe if I say that. But when we actually fully surrender unto Krishna, we can practically experience that reciprocation, and it's very, very tangible. So by experiencing this reciprocation, then we can practically come to the understanding that, okay, if I surrender unto Krishna, then naturally he'll provide everything for me. And you won't have to externally desire for this and desire for that, but it'll all naturally come. Does that answer your question? Sorry, I'm not really so good at answering questions, but I'm trying my best. Anything else over here? Mataji, any questions? Okay, I ended a little earlier, so. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.